All right, welcome. This is your teacher bot. Let's get started. M2LAB. Now, I mentioned the reading here, so I opened up this Zybooks link in a new tab and went to 2.9 to look at it. So what the idea is saying is pretty straightforward. If you don't know how to solve the problem yourself, you can't tell the computer how to solve it. So this is talking about how to have a certain number of tiles and there would be distance between them, and so there's some math going on. Now this is a pretty complicated problem. I think it's actually more complicated than the problem that we're solving. But I'd sure like you to try it. And remember not to do challenges. You can skip these. The blue ones are not part of the grade, right? So I feel like for this section, it's mostly just trying these things out. Even this one, like I said, if you don't get this working, don't feel bad about it. But try to look through the idea. So what I really want to do here is walk you through the PDF I provide. So that's right here, right? It gives everything you need to do the assignment. Sorry, here we go. So I want to kind of walk you through what's going on here. We're building crates, wooden boxes. So we have to know how big they are, and then depending on how big they are, they have a certain cost. Once you know that, you want to figure out what you're going to sell it for, and then the profit. So I build a crate for $3, sell it for $5, I make $2 profit. Now, this entire program is in here, so you could just skip to the end and type the code in. I'm not going to type the code in today. I'm going to show you where the code is. But I want you to try to understand what's going on here. Because it's rare that I will expect you to go to this level of detail in breaking down a problem, but it's very educational in explaining how you would break down a problem. Later in this class, I'm going to say, here's a problem, I want you to solve it. And this is an example of somebody taking a problem, taking it into tiny pieces, everything that could be involved, right? So I know the cost for the wood, I know how much I charge for the wood, so I can get the profit by some kind of subtraction, right? I have length, width, height, which I can turn into volume by multiplying those things together. Length times width times height is the volume. I guess we're presuming these crates have like stuff like honeycomb in them or something, because notice the crate, like, you're charging for the empty space inside as well, right? You're not just charging for the walls. So don't get too complicated on this. We'll just do the math as given. Presumably that's how their costs work. So I have the cost to hold building the crate, the cost that you would charge. So again, maybe I charge $3, and it cost me $3 to make it. I charge $5, so the profit would be $2. And those numbers will depend on how big the crate is. So now we look at pseudocode. Now pseudocode, it just means fake code. So if you were going to tell a person to do this, let's say I gave you the assignment, don't write a program to do this, just do it by hand with a pencil and paper. We're not doing that, but you would need to know how to do it probably to write the program. And these are the steps you'd follow. You'd ask the user to type in length, width, and height. Then you can find out the crate's volume. And at that point, I would run the program to make sure the volume's correct, right? And then you could worry about adding in how much it costs to make a crate that size, what is the charge to the customer for a crate that size, and then when you subtract one from the other, you make profit. Now this flowchart, I've come a long way in how I think about flowcharts. I used to turn my nose up at these and not be interested. But I think they're really, really valuable, especially if you're a visual learner, to see what's happening. Because what we're doing is taking a task and breaking it into smaller pieces. So if you want to do all this stuff, which is everything the program does, it tells you, the profit. You got to figure out how big the crate is. So that's one sub-program or one piece of the puzzle. You got to do the math, and then you have to display the results, right? Input, processing, output. Very general format. For that, you obviously have to do three things to get the length, width, and height. And then these are in order too. You figure out how big it is, then you multiply by the cost per cubic foot, then you multiply by the charge per cubic foot. You store those in cost and charge, and then profit is probably charge minus cost, right? And to display the data, you just display each item. So what you can see here is you've been given the program. You've been given the program as boxes on a sheet of paper, but that's the design. And a lot of times you'll be asked to take a design and implement it. In later classes, you'll be doing your own designs, and later in this class, when you do your own project, you'll be doing some of your own designs. So it's really useful to see how somebody turns a design into the raw material to make a program. So we ask for all these things, we do the calculation, we display. Input, processing, output, keeping it pretty simple. And they give you the math, so you can just use that math, and that's it. That's the whole thing. Now, I would encourage you to try writing some of the program. Get as far as you can maybe before you scroll down. But I'll go ahead and show you. All right. So make sure you change your comment to the top. CSC 134, M2LAB, all that good stuff. We have our words here to get started. We have main. The const double. So using the word const means this value can't change, which makes sense. The wood costs what it costs. So if General Crate Dynamics, whatever they're called, if they get a better deal on lumber, then they would have to recompile the program with this number changed to show they could make more money, because they're making the crate for less, maybe cost the same price. So that's what const means. It just means these values can't be changed. These other values can all be changed because the user is going to input them or they're going to be calculated. We do our thing that I showed in the last few videos about how to set. Show point is what always shows it, but it's not a big deal. And you could reword this. It's pretty good. I have length, width, height, and I'm saving those to 3 variables. I find the volume by multiplying. I know the cost is based on the volume, another multiplication. The charge, same thing. And profit, like I said, would be if it costs $5 to the customer and it cost me $3 to make, I take home $2. Those values may be different depending on the size of the crate. And it's going to print out the volume is cubic feet, cost to build, cost to customer, profit. There you go. And here's the example of how the program would run. So I recommend you type in these values and see if your program gives the same results. Okay, like I said, don't type in these numbers. You just want to type in the actual program. So I think this will be good practice. Maybe you print it out or have it on a separate screen. But I think this will be good practice for you to see. And that's the video. I wanted to keep it fairly short, and thank you for watching.